climate bill offers money to go green starting now. Faith leaders say January 6 committee report downplays role of Christian nationalism. New York governor approves legislation for human composting after death. Netanyahu vows massive Israeli squatting on Palestinian land. 2023 to be tougher for global economy than 2022, IMF chief says. Birmingham Islamic Society donates halal chicken for UAB students and faculty. From Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Saamiyah Syed. Our top story tonight, tax credits for heat pumps, electrical vehicles, and rooftop solar panels are now available to households per a new U.S. federal law. In 2022, Congress passed the biggest climate bill in its history. The legislation offers households thousands of dollars to transition from fossil fuel burning appliances and vehicles to cleaner versions, the Washington Post reports. On January 1st, middle-income households could access more than half a dozen tax credits for electric stoves, cars, rooftop solar panels, and more. Sometime in mid-2023, lower-income households will also be able to get upfront discounts on some of those same appliances. Find out if you're eligible for these tax credits depending on your zip code and income through this online tool shown on the screen. We have a special segment coming up later tonight on this topic, so keep watching Muslim News. Progressive Democrats of America plan to hold rallies nationwide on Friday to mark the second anniversary of the January 6, 2021 insurrection. They're calling on lawmakers to protect the United States from attacks on democracy. That includes the gutting of voting rights protections and threats to election officials. The rallies are being set to held 2 weeks after the House Committee on the January 6 Capitol attack released its final report. The committee's 18-month investigation into the insurrection involved looking into former President Donald Trump's role in planning and orchestrating it. The Capitol riot was an attempt to stop lawmakers from certifying the 2020 presidential election. The committee's report showed Trump was a driving force behind the insurrection. It recommended the former Republican president be barred from holding public office again. Trump announced his 2024 presidential bid in November. In related news, faith leaders are pushing corporate media and the American public to confront the role of Christian nationalism played in the January 6, 2021 insurrection. They warn that ignoring the link could make similar violence more likely in the future. Their effort aims to fill in what they say are critical gaps in the U.S. House Committee's report on the attack. Released last week, the document laid out extensive evidence showing former President Donald Trump was a driving force behind the attack. Christian nationalism was mentioned just once in the report. That's despite many Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol openly expressing Christian nationalist beliefs before, during, and after the attack. Hundreds took part in what was called a Jericho March and prayed for the election results to be overturned the day before the insurrection. Some protesters were heard chanting, "Christ is King" on January 6th. As well, Trump supporters carried flags displaying a Jesus fish painted red, white, and blue like the American flag. They bore the words, "Proud American Christian." Former President Donald Trump had business dealings with China despite spending years blasting politicians linked to the communist regime. That revelation was among the details released along with Trump's taxes this week. The former president had a bank account in China, but it's unclear why. Trump has denied having any account in the country. The ex-president's biographer, David K. Johnston, said as long as Trump disclosed these accounts, that's not an issue. But lying that he did not have a bank account in China should be investigated. Trump has businesses in other countries, especially India, and he could have corporate bank accounts in those countries, Johnston said. Johnston also suggested looking into foreign governments putting money into Trump's pockets. Saudi Arabia has done this in a variety of ways. This includes renting out 1 or 2 entire floors in the former Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., Johnston said. New York has joined other U.S. states that allow for the conversion of human bodies into compost after death. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed legislation Saturday authorizing the natural conversion of corpses into compost, according to the New York Post. The system provides an alternative to those who wish to avoid the environmental effects of other forms of final disposition, such as burial or cremation. With this type of burial, the remains of the deceased are placed into a reusable container together with plant materials such as wood chips, alfalfa, and straw. This forms an ideal environment for naturally occurring bacteria to decompose the body, which takes about a month. Washington was the first U.S. state to legalize human composting in 2019. Colorado and Oregon passed similar laws in 2021, followed by Vermont and California last year. U.S. President Joe Biden granted full pardons to 6 people before the end of 2022. The White House said Biden is a believer in second chances. An 80-year-old woman convicted of second-degree murder for killing her husband was among those pardoned, according to a list released Friday. 5 others who were pardoned served their sentences for drug and alcohol-related crimes. Biden used his clemency power for the 3rd time last year. He pardoned thousands of people convicted of simple marijuana possession in October. Police officers near Times Square during the New Year's Eve ball drop were attacked by an alleged Muslim extremist wielding a knife, authorities told the New York Post. 3 officers were injured by 19-year-old Trevor Bickford, who was shot in the shoulder during the attack on Saturday, police said. New York City is bracing for a full return of tourists for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted tourism nearly 3 years ago. The city deployed a bomb squad, K-9 teams, a heavy weapons team, and drones in anticipation of the influx. Bickford was reportedly on an FBI watch list due to concerns about his radicalization. His aunt alerted the police to statements her nephew made expressing a desire to travel and fight in Afghanistan against coalition forces, the New York Post reported. The officers injured in the attack are expected to make a full recovery. A story on Birmingham Islamic Society donates halal chicken for UAB students and faculty comes with details after the break. So stay tuned and we will be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Students and staff at the University of Alabama at Birmingham no longer need to search for halal meat locally. This is after the University of Alabama officials began working with the Birmingham Islamic Society to obtain halal chicken. A donor agreed to pay the cost of providing 800 pounds of halal chicken a month to the university's Blazer Kitchen. Since July, about 150 of the roughly 750 UAB students who use the kitchen, as well as 25 UAB employees, have received halal chicken each month. This is a change for people like Rafeka Hossain, who emigrated from Bangladesh to Birmingham for her graduate degree at the university. She and her husband didn't have transportation to get around and struggled to shop for groceries, especially when it came to finding halal meat. That led the Hossains and their 2 children to turn to a vegetarian diet for 4 months. But with the partnership between Birmingham's Islamic Society and the university, the family no longer does that. Incoming Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke of an exclusive Jewish right to expand settlements inside Israel proper and Galilee and the Negev. He also said Israel had the right to plant squatters in the Palestinian West Bank. That right is exclusively Jewish, Netanyahu said. The Associated Press also reports that Netanyahu announced that he has pledged to ultimately annex the Palestinian West Bank entirely to Israel. An exclusive Jewish right to settle and live in those lands implies the 6.5 million Palestinians who live on them are there by suffrage. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry said Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's storming of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound was a dangerous escalation of the conflict. Nearly 1,000 Rohingya in Bangladesh's refugee camp in the southern border district of Cox's Bazar held a rally Saturday. They demanded a peaceful and dignified return to their home in Burma's Rakhine state. A refugee boy held up a placard with the words, "2023 should be the Rohingya home year." Protesters carried banners with various slogans including "Rohingya want to smile in 2023" and "Enough is enough." Rohingya community leaders lamented the uncertainty around their peaceful and dignified repatriation and poor living conditions in Bangladesh's 33 camps. Rohingya children are growing up without proper education and guidelines. Bangladesh is hosting more than 1.2 million Rohingya who fled the Burmese military's brutal genocide in Rakhine State in August 2017. Every year, around 35,000 newborn babies are added to the numbers of refugees. Swedish authorities have closed 17 private Islamic schools since 2019. They claim the schools are unfit to conduct school activities, but critics see it as part of anti-Islamic rhetoric. In July, the Swedish Schools Inspectorate closed Al-Azhar private Islamic school due to what they called mismanagement. Al-Azhar, where more than 200 students were enrolled, is among 17 of Sweden's 19 private Islamic schools that have been shut down. Most of the schools were shuttered this year as the Swedish government cracked down on private religious establishments. 2 Islamic schools are challenging the decision in court and are still operating. The inspectorate deemed the management unfit to conduct school activities after it was assessed that children are at risk of being exposed to radicalization. Closure of the Islamic schools has affected nearly 10,000 Muslim students with origins from the Middle East, North and East Africa. The head of the International Monetary Fund has warned 2023 will be tougher than 2022 for most of the global economy. That's because the United States, the European Union, and China are slowing down in growth. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said 1/3 of the world's economies are expected to be in recession. Her remarks come after the IMF in October cut its global growth forecast to 2.7%, down from the 2.9% forecast in July. The war in Ukraine and sharply rising interest rates are contributing to the slowdown. Georgieva said China, the world's second-largest economy, is likely to grow at or below global growth for the first time in 40 years. COVID-19 cases in China are surging following the dismantling of its ultra-strict zero-COVID policy. Georgieva said she expected China's growth to improve toward the year-end, but there are concerns about its longer-term trajectory. Coming up after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we will be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. To discuss the climate bill credit announcement, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Saamiyah. If you are waiting for solar panels on your roof, or electric vehicles, or a heat pump, what is a heat pump? Well, you will get tax credit starting January 1st. We have someone who has been working on climate change and related issues, Stan Cox. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Great to be with you.
Stan Cox is the lead scientist at the Land Institute. So do you agree with the statement some people have that it is the largest single American investment to slow global warming?
I believe that is probably true, but it says more about our failure to act in the past than it does about the significance of this bill. It's a lot of money, big investment, but it's going to require much more if we're going to drive greenhouse emissions down to where they need to be by 2030 or 2040.
Could you define us what are the measures which this particular law has?
It focuses on the kind of subsidies that you were describing. That is, I think, the main thing. But in doing that, it kind of has a built-in assumption that if you just get a bigger and bigger market going for green energy and for electric cars and so forth, that the market will kind of work its magic and flush fossil fuels out of the economy, which is not normally the case. That's not normally the way things work. New sources of energy generally just add to the total electricity or energy supply, and they don't shove older sources of energy out of the way. Now, certainly, coal is and having a hard time now, and coal probably is going to be gradually removed from the market. But most of that is due to much more natural gas being used, for example. So when we can subsidize large fleets of electric vehicles, but if the electricity they're using is being powered by natural gas, then we're still not stopping greenhouse gas emissions.
So, but the solar panels, which will be available for houses, I mean, they are available now, but subsidies. Do you think it is a real good incentive for people to put solar panels on their roofs? Or is it going to be still out of reach for most people?
Yeah, I think you've put your finger on the problem. It's a great thing to do, and the more people who do it, the better. But these subsidies are only going to help people who can afford to spend quite a few $1,000s on doing it, on putting these panels up. It will also mean that only homeowners are able to take advantage of this. There are probably very few landlords who are going to do it because their tenants or who pay the electricity bill, so the landlord doesn't have an incentive to do it. And the same goes with electric cars. They're much more expensive than gas-powered vehicles, and in any of these cases, the subsidies are, I'm sure they were calculated as just enough of an incentive to get people who are able to afford these things to get them, but it's going to sharpen inequality, and you'll have more well-off people who are suddenly going to have a really small electricity bill and enjoying that, whereas people who can't afford to do this with prices of fossil fuels going up are going to require, are going to be paying even larger electricity bills. And in addition to solar panels and electric cars, the heat pump, it basically heating and cooling run by electricity in one piece of equipment. Those also are very expensive. They're also in short supply, and it's once again going to be the people using this very efficient form of heating and cooling are going to be those at the upper end of the income spectrum.
So what are they expecting? They're expecting some type of trickle down impact, that if people in the society at the higher end who have a higher net worth, they are going to use it, so other people may eventually adopt it. It will become fashionable. How is it going to work?
Yeah, I think. I think maybe they're maybe even if they aren't really expecting that to happen, it's something that you can say for this. They want to have in the only kinds of climate policies that can get majority support in the Congress are ones that are, as they say, good for business. And so, in fact, this bill wasn't called the Climate Mitigation Act. It was called the Inflation Reduction Act, and it was sold as creating jobs, reducing inflation, etc., which is all good. But if they passed laws that really would directly get gas, oil, and coal out of the economy on an expedited schedule, without going through the market, but just ratcheting down year by year the amount of coal, oil, and gas that can be used. That would require a lot of economic adjustment that is not going to be the kind of thing that corporations or the Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, are going to be backing, and it's very hard to get that kind of legislation through Congress.
Yeah, but now the Congress divided. If House ever gets its speaker elected, do you expect GOP, when trying through House, disrupt any of the things which are already in place in the law, or chances of that are limited?
Yeah, seeing items in the news saying that the Republicans in the House are going to do pull whatever procedures they can to slow down the administration or the implementation of this Inflation Reduction Act. They can't pass any new laws because of the Senate and the White House are controlled by Democrats, but they can mess up the ability of the executive branch to fund these programs and so forth. There are a lot of procedural things they can do to mess around with it and slow walk what's the provisions of the act.
Do you expect President Biden to use his executive power to issue executive orders to do more to retain to reduce the impact of the climate change?
Yes, the White House says he's going to do exactly that, and there are things he can do, but it's pretty limited. It would be nowhere on the scale of what the Inflation Reduction Act is providing for. But through the EPA and other means, he can try to do carry out these executive actions. The problem is that executive actions are always vulnerable to being struck down by the courts, and this has already happened, for example, with some of the EPA's executive actions specifically on carbon pollution. So I don't think we can really expect a lot there. It's only right now we're in a stalling pattern until 2025, when potentially then more can be done.
Well, thank you so much, Stan Cox, for your time. Stan Cox is the lead scientist at Land Institute.
Thank you.
Back to you, Saamiyah.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.